Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Manny Lagos. Manny, how are you doing today? It's a fine Minnesota day.
It is a fine Minnesota day. We finally, I think shifted from fall to winter officially. So I'm going to call it, as I usually do on this show for the seasonal stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Actually, my brain was waking up this morning and we still might go outside and train. Obviously today is a important training day for the group. So they'll be in the bubble if they can't play on the grass because it is a big tactical session today. So,
Gotcha.
But that's the reality of our climate.
The opening question of the week this week, Manny, which eye dominant are you?
My eyes are getting horrible. I don't know. Honestly, I just started having
neither,
and I should even have them on now, and I do not. It's just, yeah, I'm in denial about eyes in general. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, and then the laugh you heard in the background there, the show that this is the name that this show is named after, Jon Marthaler. It's Jon Marthaler's show. Jon, welcome back into the show. Welcome back into your show. Yep. How are you doing? And then which eye dominant are you?
It's good to be back. There's snow on the ground here in Minnesota, which means the MLS League office thinks it's a perfect day for some mid-season soccer. Right eye dominant, which I guess means I'm a right winger.
Yeah, I guess you should be put on the right side of the field.
That's right.
It depends on your left foot, John. If you can cut in and shoot, that might, we'll see. Yeah.
I will say there are a few other problems that might prevent me from playing right winger.
All right, so we've got plenty to talk about. We'll talk about the U.S. men's national team and Tim Weah popping up on the left wing because Pochettino and coaching staff found out he's left eye dominant and wanted him over there. We've got plenty of internationals to discuss, playoffs to discuss as well. The Loons taking on the LA Galaxy this Sunday. We've also got to catch up on those game threes that we talked about 2 weeks ago. Couple awards, couple big moves in Major League Soccer to discuss. So let's jump right into the U.S. men's national team discussion, boys. Couple of wins for the U.S. Overall thoughts on what you saw in those two games, Manny?
So I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna start differently because I get like little things that get me really excited, and there's these. Obviously, these are the quarterfinals, but for me, it's getting to know the team and to know the guys. And so I texted my group friend chat for the national team, Tanner Tessman won this break, okay? And it really just means I thought he was so good. He wasn't great in Jamaica, but just there's something there different that we haven't had in those positions of the national team. And then we saw Weston McKennie become a little bit better version of himself. Pulisic has been amazing. So we kind of know all those guys, but I was really, really impressed with Tanner Tessman. Overall, game one, I didn't necessarily love. It was nice to get the early goal. I actually could be a little more critical of how we played. I thought we should have had much more possession when you get an early goal like that. But the second goal was one of our best halves in years. So I can't help but be excited talking about the win, just because I thought we were so good in that first half.
John?
Yeah, It was an interesting return already to sort of what you expect from the national team a little bit, like going, yeah, they beat Jamaica, big deal, which obviously not always been true. Not over the past 5 years, not over the past 20 years has that necessarily been guaranteed. But my takeaway was a little bit like, I'm not totally sure whether this is a really good version of the U.S. and they're really starting to build something, or Jamaica is just in a weird, bad spot right now. I couldn't quite tell from those games which of those is more true.
Well, it's a good observation. I mean, obviously Jamaica has a new coach, so they're going through a new kind of system and how they're going to play, and obviously they have these great attacking players. The bigger question is how they're going to keep their shape and keep going defensively. I thought. Tactically, I would really enjoyed the second game, mostly because of Robinson's inverted midfield role that he put him in. And he looked amazing, by the way. This guy who's like tearing up the Premier League up and down on the left side. Pochettino, tweaks it a little bit and kind of puts him in the inverted midfield role, defensive midfield. Like, he was just unbelievable at keeping the ball and breaking lines and passes. So, again, I was really bullish on that second game just because the first half, Jamaica couldn't even counter attack. And that was a good feeling. Again, I hadn't seen that type of game in a couple of years from the U.S. A half. Sorry, we didn't play that way in the second half. A full half like that. So it was fun.
Jedi Robinson is like 2023 Robin Lode for Minnesota in the sense that everywhere they put him, you're like, I think he might be their best defender and their best midfielder. And I'm not sure it's a good idea to put him at striker, but I kind of want to try just as
I kind of do too, and I kind
there's
of love
some
it.
chance he might be the best number 9
And
on the
then let's
U.S.
add in
men's
there, we
national
love his
team roster
nickname.
too.
I mean, his nickname is Jedi. That
Yeah.
is in itself
Can he
awesome.
play goalkeeper? We haven't considered this possibility. We've
Well,
talked a lot about U.S. goalkeepers. Maybe
yeah.
this is the answer.
If I have one thing coming out of this, obviously I was really happy to see Pepe as a 9 just score some goals and play what a 9 role is. I don't know if he still can do it over 90 minutes, but it's not. Again, and oddly enough, I'm not as worried about that position as I am about our center backs and goalkeeping. I would say that's my only criticism there. I thought Ream had a great second game. I thought he showed his age in the first game, which to me says in 2 years, that position and those two positions I think are going to be a huge kind of unknown. Where I'm just hoping we've got talent coming up that we don't know about in that position in the goalies, because I still think we need just more depth and more kind of quality there.
We are into, I think, now the second decade of going. I don't think Tim Ream is young enough to play center back for the United States anymore. Like, I feel like if we were having this discussion in 2014, it would have been like, well, there's Tim Ream, but how long can he keep doing it? And here we are again.
I like John. I think that you kind of are calling me out, which is fair because I
No,
agree.
I'm not
I
at
was
all.
no,
I think this is a compliment for Tim Ream as
it
much
is
as anything.
massive compliment to Tim Ream. Yeah, I was a skeptic, and I was like, no, he's not going to be fast enough. Something's going to happen. He goes to Europe. He just gets better and better with age, and then he gets better and better with the national team. So I do always like telling odds. I think that's kind of the story of most players' careers. Is you have a lot of people not believing in you, and you prove them wrong. And Tim Ream over and over again has made a
Yeah.
career out of that. I actually think you're maybe right. He could be. You just called it. He's our starting center back for the World Cup just because of what I just said right there. So
Yeah, probably. He probably is.
yeah.
The Brad Guzan fountain of youth he's
Oh
found.
my God, Brad Guzan is our new goalie. You figured it out right there.
Yeah, we figured
We're
out
done.
we
We're
figured out the
going the
goalkeeping
over
problem.
40 team
Can you
for
just
2
call
years from now.
Pochettino, let him know you've got the starting lineup all set in 18 months, so we're good to go?
Yep.
John's gonna be the new U.S. men's national team manager whisperer. He's just gonna
Boy,
like start Ream at center back. Start
you think
Guzan at
things have been
goalkeeper.
bad before with the U.S. men's national team. This is the worst idea we've ever had.
We've had a lot of them on this show.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is even below Jurgen Klinsmann.
I think subconsciously, guys, we are kind of happy because it was a good 2-game series, and I agree, Jamaica's Jamaica, but they are a tough out when you go there, and they have some really good Premier League players. And again, that second game tactically, I was blown away with that first half. So I'm excited for where it's going. And I mentioned it before. I thought Tanner Tesson won the international break. He just now, to me, looks like he's got potential to be in that kind of group with Adams and McKennie. And if they move Musa back to the middle, that's starting to look like a really strong center midfield.
Yeah, excuse me. I totally agree with you guys. I loved what I saw in that first half of the second game. That felt like we got the first half finished, and I texted a buddy. I'm like, that's the most fun I've had watching this team in a very long time, with how much they were just pressuring and pressing and just throttling Jamaica and just not allowing them out of their own half. And just felt like Jamaica just didn't have an answer in that first half. They came back and got a couple goals in the second half, but overall, I thought it was a fantastic break for the U.S. men's national team. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in the future. A couple other international results. I know John and I were texting about this one. Mexico losing to Honduras in the first game, but then coming back and just running all over Honduras in the second game. It sure felt like there was going to be some fireworks in that second game that just didn't happen because Mexico kind of got the goals and got what they needed out of that game, John.
Mexico is just the weirdest. They always do the weirdest things at times like this, where it's like, if they lost 9-0 in that first leg for Honduras, I would have put money on them winning the second leg 12-0 somehow. Like, that's the way Mexico goes. It's like whenever they're in qualifying for the World Cup, you look at the standings and they're in fifth place and they're in sixth place. And then on the final day, somehow they get 17 points in their final game and they qualify for the World Cup. They always manage to pull it out of the fire. And it was exactly the same thing with those quarterfinals where they were down 2-0 in Honduras. And I thought, well, this might be the time that Mexico finally, like, they're going to have to go through Gold Cup qualifying to get into the Gold Cup next year. And then they came back and scored 4 goals. I think three of them were in the second half. And Honduras looked pretty bad in that second half.
Manny, do we could still can are we still worried? I guess not worried, but are we still looking at Mexico and look and thinking this really isn't a great Mexico side? And have your opinions changed for the good or better off of what you saw over those last 2 games?
Obviously, I have a love-hate with Mexico because I really they're our biggest rival in CONCACAF for the last several decades, and I want to love when we beat them, and that's what I want. But I also just respect their passion and love of the game. And I got to tell you guys, I did watch every minute of this 180 game series. It was fascinating on so many levels. First, just to follow Joseph Rosales. So Joseph had an amazing first game, maybe the best player in the field in Honduras. He was that good up and down the field, great defensively, getting forward, helping create space for the goals. And the second game, I would say, he might have been at fault for the second goal and didn't have his best outing. But again, it was tough. The 2 games itself were starkly different in that you looked at Mexico where they kind of like, oh my God, they cannot handle Honduras away. So are they hitting rock bottom? And I honestly think sometimes in life, little moments happen where it's not something you expect. And the next thing you know, this might be the turning point for Mexico. And I know it might be crazy, but I think their coach taking that hit to the head like a man and not making excuses afterwards and just like being like it happens and not even know he's got a bloodied face and he just lost 2-0 and he's being gracious actually and going over and congratulate the Honduras team for kicking their butts. I don't know. I think he set a tone for that second game. Like I think he right away reminded Mexicans, we're Mexicans. We have soccer in us. We have passion. And they played that way in their second game. They had a great home field advantage. Honduras couldn't breathe, couldn't get out. A little bit how we played against Jamaica in that first half, but they did it for 90 minutes. And John, you're right. It was one of those games where Honduras hung in there the first half, only gave up 1 goal, hung in there for about 20 minutes, but it was one-way traffic the entire 90 minutes, and they couldn't keep it up. And I think Mexico scored in the 86th and 96th minute to win 4-0 and 4-2 in aggregate. But it was a fascinating series. And like I said, I was obviously following it for mostly for Joseph. Arriaga was out there as well, battling a little bit at center back. I think he's been playing midfield when he plays over in Europe now. But just that moment of craziness. And again, I do think you go to the fans and you're upset about that part of it. I do not like, and that fans should probably be kicked out for life, et cetera, et cetera. But what a turning moment in a series that a coach's kind of personality and attitude toward the incident, I think pushed them to winning that second game.
I do have to say, there's no more CONCACAF thing to say than, yeah, the turning point was when our coach got hit in the head with the can.
Yeah, well, that's the way I'm calling it, John. I'm calling it that way. Yeah.
It fits in. It fits in with everything we know about CONCACAF.
Dane St. Clair got a couple of clean sheets, though he only faced 4 total shots, 1 on target over the 2 games. Panama beating Costa Rica, setting up a CONCACAF semifinals between the U.S. and Panama, and then Canada and Mexico coming up in March, in the March break for that one. Are the U.S. favorites for that? I know it's a long ways out. There's plenty that can happen, plenty that can certainly change. But based off what you guys saw over this last international break from all those teams, are the U.S. favorites going into the Nations League?
Jonathan, real quick, can you help me out? I think Panama and Costa Rica tied, didn't they?
They tied in the second game, but Panama won the first game.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
Panama won 3-2.
Everybody should go back and watch the second game goal because our player Braun had one of the golazos of the week, international break. Unbelievable. And then Dane, I'm just super proud of him, getting 2 starts. Suriname's roster is tricky. I looked up their roster. They've got actually a lot of Dutch players. And it wasn't like a given that this is CONCACAF, what John just said there. So long story short, really happy for Dane. 2 shutouts internationally is unbelievable, outstanding that he got 2 starts and did well. Canada keeps rolling with Jesse Marsh. And then on the flip side of it, Harvey didn't get a lot of minutes. That's where I kind of followed it. And Braun had a golazo. So there was some Minnesota United ties in all of these series.
This is absolutely setting up for Jesse Marsh's Canada taking on the U.S. men's national team in the finals, isn't it, John?
Is Canada not the favorite? I feel like Canada's the favorite in this. Who's playing better than Canada out of those
Yeah.
teams right now?
Yeah, I
And
think
yet, I think we're kind of glossing over it, but Dane St. Clair got both starts in competitive matches. Now it's Suriname, so it's not exactly like he was starting against Argentina in Copa America or whatever, but still, I think it's a big deal that St. Clair got chosen for both of those starts.
Yeah, one of my favorite texts this weekend is one of my friends asked me if does Dane have any American relatives.
Yeah, that's
So
right. Any American parents, like he's got any sort of citizen, can we naturalize him forcibly? Is that a thing that we're allowed to do anymore? I don't. I bet it's not, but we should think about trying.
I don't think FIFA would allow that, but we
You
can
know what?
certainly worth a shot.
We just got to find a sponsor. It's like, Jesse Marsh is the Canada national team coach built by the Home Depot or whatever like that. We just got to find somebody to sponsor us kidnapping Dane St. Clair and naturalizing him.
my favorite, whenever I ever hear Jesse Marsh, everybody kind of thinks about I don't know, different levels. My hate brain always goes to Racine, Wisconsin. Like it just, you say Jesse Marsh, I think Racine, Wisconsin, which is where he's from. So it's my
Yep.
Midwest side of me, but it's amazing. Kid from Racine, Wisconsin, having a great coaching career and now taking over Canada, which was unexpected. I think a lot of people thought he would really try to stay in Europe, and it's a great storyline I think for Canada that they are right there now and with us, and Mexico's a little behind. Although I will tell you, this will be a fascinating couple of years building the World Cup because I think all three. I don't know. Our program in Canada has looked the strongest, but don't count Mexico out. I think in 18 months because I think they're going to build something and grow into it as well.
Will certainly be fun to watch all these teams kind of prepare and get ready for the World Cup coming up in a couple years' time. End
Hey
of
guys, I have
season.
one other quick stat this weekend that I thought was amazing and just blew my mind. Messi tying the international assist record with none other than Landon Donovan, which I did not know, which is amazing. 58
What?
assists.
Is that a real fact? I had no idea
That
that
is a
was true.
real fact.
That is
Landon
wild.
Donovan owned the assist record for international soccer.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think over the years I've gotten so distracted by the stats of like the US women's national team because you've got like Christine Lilly played 327 international games or something like that, and Abby Wambach scored 190 internet, all of these amazing stats that like whatever the men's record is for international games that Cristiano Ronaldo's been chasing, like 102 or whatever. It's like big deal. 100
Yeah.
goals? Who cares? There's like 6 US women who have scored 100 international goals. And so over the years, I've just sort of gotten distracted and been like, oh yeah, that's like different. These
Yeah.
stats are at different levels.
Generation, I did play with Landon. We won a couple championships together. So I have a little bit more of the old school where I'm like, I still kind of think Landon's our best U.S. soccer player ever. And I think it's real because he wasn't just about scoring goals. He was about assists. He was about like, if you're open, the odds are better you're going to score. He'd pass it. And that was his personality. So I'm loving this new generation. And obviously Christian Pulisic has, I think, really gone into a new level now where the debate can start to happen. If he starts to have a really couple good years, arguably he will be our best national player of all time. But I'm still sticking with Landon. I thought that was just an amazing stat that I saw this weekend.
You
You know what?
mentioned, oh, go ahead.
Now that we're off on this tangent, another stat I was thinking about. So Alex Ovechkin is chasing Wayne Gretzky's record for NHL goals, a record that everyone looked at it and said, well, this is never going to be broken. There's no chance anyone's ever going to catch Wayne Gretzky in terms of the number of goals scored. Will anyone ever get more goals in MLS than Chris Wondolowski? And here's why I asked that question. If there's a player who is good enough to score 170 goals in MLS, won't they end up somewhere else in this day and age? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's actually a good point. Yeah, I mean, the one of the coolest things about MLS guys right now is there is a identity like reality that there's a model where we think the pathway is right to Europe, but we have to remember we have these NFL owners that don't understand that pathway. It's true. I just think
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it's going to be broken because I think there's going to be some owners that like, why don't I just pay like my quarterbacks and keep them here? So we'll see. I
True.
mean, I think that's a interesting. You're right. If it's a young guy, but I
Well,
still think. Yeah, go ahead.
the other thing that's true about Wando, I guess, is that by age 27 or whatever, he had 6 MLS goals or something like that.
Yeah.
Like at the
Yeah, he's
time when
amazing. Yeah.
now you would be considering him completely washed up, he was like not even getting his career started. And then he scored, 15 goals a season for 10 straight years and ended up holding the record. But
That's
It's
another
gonna
Ream situation where people didn't believe in him and didn't. I think that's a great lesson for anybody of our young people watching and playing. Keeping at it is an amazing value and virtue for this sport because it's a lot of people have given up on Wando early in his career, or middle level of his career too, to be honest.
yeah.
You would think it would have to be someone kind of like a Joseph Martinez who comes over at 23 after kind of crashing out of Europe and then just puts in season after season of 20 plus goals
Yeah.
and doesn't seem like he wanted to leave, wasn't really getting a whole lot of calls from Europe, it seemed like at the time before the injury. And he just kind of goes about his business putting in 20 goal season after 20 goal season while in his mid 20s and Europe's looking for the younger 20 guys. It
Well,
feels
I
like it's
think
going to have to be
Cucho is a
something like
good
that.
example right now. I
Yeah.
probably on paper, Cucho's going back to Europe for a good price tag, and they're going to move on and evolve. But there is an argument to be made that their ownership group could come up and say, Cucho, don't go. We'll pay you a lot of money. Just stay. You love it here. And a lot of guys love the U.S. I mean, it's a pretty good place to live and raise a family. So there is an interesting identity of where the league goes over the next couple of years. And I love you bringing that up because some of it, we need the pathway to happen. I think we actually need more revenue into our system to really build our rosters to be competitive with the top 5 teams in Europe. But I do think there's a lot of owners that are like, I'd just rather pay you the money and stay and win, which I kind
Yeah.
of like about our league, by the way.
Yeah. You kind of want to see that too. Just these owners just throwing around the cash and saying, let's just win it all and just be better than everybody else and just pay our way to the top, essentially. You mentioned Messi, and that brings up another note that we had in the rundown. Argentina losing to Paraguay 2-1. A couple other interesting notes and tidbits that happened in qualifying there down in South America. Venezuela and Brazil, I believe, drawing or losing, but at the end, some shenanigans happened with some sprinklers coming on late in the game to in
Yes.
Venezuela to force the draw or I can't remember if it was a draw or loss, but it was close at the time and sprinklers coming on. You love to see just all the shenanigans, all the stops being pulled out in international play when you're gearing for a big upset like that, Manny.
Oh yeah, it was a wild weekend, and I didn't follow as much as I was following the CONCACAF, but I think one of the big notes was I think Bolivia gave up their first point at home. I think Paraguay ended up tying at
Did we jinx
13,000.
it?
What's that?
Did we
Oh yeah,
jinx it?
we jinxed it. Yeah, Paraguay had a great. I saw the highlight for the goal, but they finally Bolivia gave up a point at home, and Paraguay ended up tying at 13,000 feet.
Right now, the football Bolivia is like, well, it's time to build a stadium at 16,000 feet. We got to keep going up.
Just after we talked about scheduling games at higher and higher altitude 2 weeks ago, then they give up their first point in a 2-2 draw to Paraguay. Just incredible. Other notes from across Major League Soccer. End of season awards have continued to be announced. Wilfred Nancy, Coach of the Year. I feel that made sense. I think he deserved it, and he's who I voted for over Tata Martino, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But that one made sense to me, and rightfully deserving was Wilfred Nancy, John.
I think when it came down to it, everyone looked at Columbus and they looked at Miami and said, well, Miami got more points, but there's no evidence Tata did any coaching during the entire season. And so we're going to go with where we can see what this chef did over here. This chef just rolled, had the most expensive ingredients and put them on a plate and put it in the microwave. And that's all that seemed to happen over here. So I get why I voted for Nancy, and I think a lot of people had the exact same reasoning as I did.
Manny?
Yeah, I think you guys just made Tata leave the league by your
I
vote.
know. We drove
This
him
guy
out
gets
with
the
our
most points in the history of the league, and you guys are like, "No, you're not that good. I'm voting for Nancy." And then Tata's like, "Fine, I'm out. This is it." So,
It's funny, the whole experience of watching Inter Miami this year, for someone who's in the central time zone and whose team plays usually 7:30 starts, is that every time I watched Miami this season, they were down 2-1 at halftime. And then, Minnesota would play and, I'd cover the game and I'd write about it. And then you'd turn on or whatever, the MLS 360 for the end of the Western Conference games. And it's like, wait, Miami won 5-2? How did that happen?
well, yeah,
They were very much.
As far as I ever saw Miami, they were a terrible team that always was losing at halftime.
Well, that's the last moment too. The Atlanta loss. No, I bring it up. It was a wild weekend for news with I guess you had Tata, Eric Quill. I played with Eric Quill being announced in Dallas. I mean, he's put some good time in, but he's had college. He coached at Columbus a little bit. He's been around, so that was a big surprise hire for Dallas, I think.
I
The
also like
top
to see that pathway, Manny, the pathway
Yes,
from
yeah.
coaching in the USL and earning your stripes there and then getting the call up and getting a job in the MLS. I really like that pathway, at least forming for this one time. Hopefully, maybe we see it in the future, but having that pathway for coaches is good, I think.
It's so exciting. Like I said, it's not actually work for somebody who's put his time in a lot of different levels, and really it'll be interesting to see, like I said, where Dallas goes with what they're trying to do. But I agree with you. I just to go back to the Tata one, it was a wild weekend. I was
Yep.
surprised, in all honesty. It was just and again I brought up uh just maybe it's because you guys got him said no more because of your votes, but the reality is I'm fascinated to know what the real reason was. I mean,
Yeah.
is it just that he wants a new thing and he's like, I did this, so I'm gonna go move on, or is it honestly Messi's like, I don't know, I kind of want some of my friends in here, and I didn't really love playing for him. So I would love to know more of the story, how quickly this turned from their coach to now they have to find a new coach.
Who do we think takes over? Because I know immediately all the big names were started to be thrown
Oh,
around.
unbelievable. Zavi.
Yeah. Who do
Yeah.
we think takes over there? I mean, it feels like Jim Curtin's going to go to Atlanta depending on how they go in the playoffs. I mean, that feels like a natural fit there. Probably not the fit in Miami, I would imagine, because as you mentioned, Messi probably wants one of his friends, probably Xavi there. Zidane was mentioned as well. I mean, like I said, all the big names were thrown out because it's Miami, it's David Beckham, it's Lionel Messi. They're throwing out all the names, they're getting all the big names. Who do we think's the favorite to land these two coaching jobs in Miami and Atlanta, John?
Well, Atlanta, I think everyone keeps talking about Jim Curtin. So as in my mind, he already has that job. Like they'd
Yeah,
already announced it. If they go a different direction, I'm going to have real trouble remembering that Jim Curtin is not the coach in Atlanta.
I'll be
As far
surprised if he gets through this cycle without a job because of
it's,
how good he is.
it'll be funny if Atlanta wins MLS Cup and then Jim Curtin the next day is named the manager of Atlanta United instead of Valentino. As far as Miami, I think the front runner is Phil Neville again. I think they're going back to that.
Uh, yeah, I'm still in processing mode, to be honest. I can't. My brain is still like, wow, that was really big news. And that was I didn't see that one coming. So, but
Yeah.
it's a big moment for Miami. Like I said, they're putting a ton of investment in winning now and figuring out how to win. And they won the Supporters Shield, but that's not what the league's really about. It's about the playoffs. And so this will be a big hire for them. It'll be a big hire to kind of continue this trajectory of this super team, like Real Madrid. So maybe Zidane is the favorite because of that model. Worked pretty well.
You say it's not about the supporter shield, but it got Miami a berth into the Club World Cup. FIFA, anybody
Yeah.
tell FIFA that we're not about the supporter shield in this country? I think they missed the memo on that one. Other
I think they got the memo. If you're being honest, I mean, I
No,
think they did the memo
I think they
really
understood
well.
the assignment.
other awards, Steven Moreira, Defender of the Year, Christian Kalina, Goalkeeper of the Year. I think those were fittings awards recipients as well. And it kind of makes sense for with the season those two guys had. While we're already talking Atlanta and Miami, let's discuss that game three. Incredible series here for Atlanta to pull the probably one of the biggest upsets in Major League Soccer history in the playoffs, winning games 2 and 3 to knock Miami out of the playoffs in the first round. This is a series I don't think anybody had written Atlanta as winning because coming in as a wild card, the discrepancies between their seasons, and Atlanta just get behind Brad Guzan, who had the series of an absolute lifetime, Manny, stopping every shot that Lionel Messi threw at him, and Atlanta move on to the next round, and Miami surprisingly are done after one round of the playoffs.
I mean, it was a great series, and credit to Atlanta. It wasn't like a one game where there was a smash and grab happened. This was a real kind of build into the belief and identity of how they're going to take on the best team in league history in terms of points, and they deserved it by the end. But in 3 games, they really built into like hurting Miami in different ways, and it showed a little bit of the lack of discipline that John was talking about. A lot of 2-1 halftime deficits they had to turn around. And ultimately, that third goal by Atlanta just kind of to me exposed some of their little bit of lack of discipline for a championship team in the playoffs. Yeah, maybe the regular season you get away with that, but in the playoffs, you got to be really sharp for 90 minutes on both sides of the ball, and just the way they kind of defended when a player went down, they lost their discipline. I don't think it happened because that one moment. I think Atlanta over the series really put pressure on them mentally and physically, and they couldn't quite respond. And again, in the end, we've talked about the legs you need in the playoffs, and they looked a little not sharp. Even Messi, as good as he was, he still couldn't quite break Atlanta down the way I think he did in the regular season.
Yeah, I thought it was a very surprising result, John, and one that I know a lot of people across the league were watching, and some were happy about, some were not happy about. Do you think this is good or bad for the playoffs?
I mean, it depends on who you are when you're judging whether it's good or bad. If you're an Apple TV executive, you're pretty mad about the whole thing. If you're a fan, near as I could tell, most fans found the whole thing delightful. That aren't Miami fans. Like obviously Miami fans unhappy, and probably some neutral fans too. But for the most part, if you're an MLS diehard, I think 98% of the MLS diehards were rooting for Atlanta to win this one just because they're tired of they're tired of the idea that it's, all you need is just Lionel Messi and all of his buddies to come and rule the league. So, and here's the other thing, and I've been thinking a lot about this. If if this was like a normal cup competition that Miami lost in the sixth round of the FA Cup or whatever, nobody would even notice. Like that sort of thing happens all the time in Coppa Italia or the FA Cup or
Yeah.
whatever. It's not at all notable, but it's just the fact that they play it at the end of the season as playoffs. It's like, oh, this is a big deal. If it, I'm still a little bit salty over, you know, I had a conversation with somebody, one of the journalists that has been over here, and he was absolutely shocked that 18 teams made the playoffs or whatever. And all right, but you're from England where everybody makes the playoffs in two different sets of playoffs. You guys have a Leagues Cup and an FA Cup. Should we have two sets of playoffs? Is that what you're looking for here? It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous at all. Don't criticize this. I understand that if you look at it from an American lens and say, well, too many teams make the playoffs, okay, that's fine. You can argue about whatever that is. It's in line with the NHL, it's in line with the NBA. But in terms of just looking at it from a soccer perspective and thinking of it as a good team getting knocked out in the earlier rounds of a cup competition, not at all notable. This happens all the time.
I did not expect playoff trutherism to pop up on
Yeah,
this
that's
show.
right. Here I am. Random
Um,
rant in the middle of the podcast. That's what I'm good for.
I like it.
Now, my viewpoint is there's no doubt it's been a cool couple years to have the greatest player of all time, and as a personal fan of having that player in our country and building the brand of the game because he is so good, and like I geek out personally as a fan watching him elevate, watching his ability when he's on the field to just elevate an entire team of older guys and younger guys. It truly is a special time and place in history of American soccer that probably we didn't have players like that since the 70s when the superstars like Pelé and Beckenbauer and Cruyff came over. So that part I accept and acknowledge that I understand whether it's the league or the global looking at us of Messi, and like that's great. And I want us to expand our brand. But I do always argue that I still think the secret sauce of MLS is our parity. It is the fact that this league is 32 teams deep. Every year you can build a roster again that can potentially compete in a way that maybe in a couple of years we can't anymore. Maybe the money gets so high that the big teams, we'll see. That's the great thing about the drama of where this league goes. But right now, in this space and moment, to me, the real story of our league for the world is the fact that there's this awesome parity that happens and that we get to teach them about whether other sports do the same stuff. They go through this grind of a season, and you have to create a club and you have to create a team and you have to create a coaching staff that builds their team to not only be good in the regular season, because in the NFL, NBA, you don't play everybody equally, but you have to be great in the playoffs and you have to be strong mentally. And so I love that my storyline is that, the reality that the world just found it, this isn't a messy league. the league, it has a lot of parity. And if you're not sharp and don't play well, you get caught. And in general, a lot of times there's teams that don't prepare well by the end of the year of playing their best soccer and don't win the MLS playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Other results in the Eastern Conference game threes: Orlando beating Charlotte on penalties in game three, 4-1 on penalties. Go through now. They'll play Atlanta because Atlanta just didn't want more rivals to play in the playoffs. One rival after another. New York City FC outlasted Cincinnati in the play in penalty kicks, just as everyone predicted. New York City upsetting Cincinnati, moving on, setting up the Hudson River Derby at Citi Field, where there will be a circus, a literal circus in the parking lot while the game is going on, because why wouldn't it? This is MLS. We got to love this league. It's amazing that there will be an MLS playoff game inside a baseball stadium with a circus outside in the parking lot. Great. Loving that and looking forward to that. LAFC surviving the Whitecaps in game three to move on. In the Eastern Conference, that sets up Orlando, Atlanta, and New York City, New York Red Bulls. Who's the favorite out of those four teams, which I don't expect many people expected to be the four teams, maybe outside of Orlando, to be the ones moving on to the Eastern Conference semifinals, Manny?
It's, we took last week off. So my brain is going back to, like, I woke up, we had the game three weekend off. Great. We got through, and that's why we've had 3 weeks off. But every team in the West woke up and said, we might win the MLS Cup. We might host the MLS Cup. Yeah. It was an unbelievable, dramatic Eastern Conference where the first, second, and third seeds are all out. It was a fascinating kind of to now see all the teams of the West we all believe. It's such an exciting weekend coming up, because I think all the teams in the West are like, hey, we get through these next two games. More than likely, every team except for us will host, and we'll more than likely host unless it's Orlando. It blew my mind. And then I go back to I'm still fascinated about the Subway Series. I know it's the Hudson River. You guys are better at that kind of, I like the fact. I'm really excited to see a New York series. I think it's going to be amazing. The Orlando game against Charlotte, I felt a little bit for Charlotte's their lack of discipline. That PK at the end was a PK in my mind, by the way. I can't believe he grabbed his shirt in the box like that. So it was wild. It was a wild weekend, and I thought if you just keep it in the East and we shift to the West, I think every team woke up last weekend or 2 weekends ago being like, this is unbelievable. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at that Eastern Conference field, and there's not really, I would say, a clear-cut favorite out of those four teams. It's really hard to pick who's going to be the favorite, because you could make a case for all four of those teams, John, to win the next two games and make it to the MLS Cup final.
It's funny you're talking about hosting and stuff. I just imagined after those game three things, like the Allianz Field ground crew waking up and being like, all right, we're going to winter hold on. Put the winter stuff away, guys. We got to somehow try to keep this grass going for another 4 weeks now somehow.
Heat's still on, John. Real life, heat's still on, buddy. So
yeah. It's
we got to believe.
I think the favorites Orlando's been, if you look at the numbers sort of over the second half of the season, they've been maybe the best team in the league. Like Orlando and Seattle were the two that you look at their results over the second half, and it's like, actually these two teams are playing better than anybody since June 1st or something like that. So I think,
John, you notice like all the national media is like anointed Atlanta to win this game. I was fascinated, but they're just Atlanta's got it.
It's very true. Every story, Orlando's like playing at home and the favorite in the Eastern Conference, and every story is like, how will Atlanta handle playing in the Eastern Conference final? Right. What will Rob Valentino do to prepare his team for MLS Cup?
Are you ready to take your Loons fandom to the next level? Join Minnesota United's official season ticket waitlist, The Preserve, for just $25 to get early access to tickets and first shot at securing available season tickets in 2026. Visit MNUFC.com/tickets/preserve to become a member today. they're all jumping on board the Brad Guzan trade after his wonderful performance that set him back about, or that put him back about 10 years in age, and now he's ready to be the goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team at the upcoming World Cup. In the Western Conference, setting up LAFC Seattle Saturday night, LA Galaxy Minnesota on Sunday night. We'll talk about that game coming up in a little bit. I want to talk about the other one, LAFC Seattle, LAFC hosting this one. What are we expecting out of this one? This one's a heavyweight fight between those two teams that have faced each other a number of times over the past couple of years. LAFC has really gotten Seattle's number. Can Seattle find a way to turn this around, Manny?
Oh, I mean, you're right. Is it 10? 10 games they haven't gotten a result against them or gotten?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like I said, it's interesting because I still don't think LAFC quite knows what their identity is and how they're going to kind of go about winning. But I do think at home and with that kind of just Seattle's been so good defensively, but I don't see LAFC losing at home in this big of a game personally. So but we'll see. It's going to be a great matchup. It's another defense versus offense a little bit. Very similar to what we'll just talk about with the LA Galaxy, Minnesota, probably. Seattle's defense has been outstanding, like ours. So they're going to have to really stop maybe probably the most dangerous attacking player in Denny Bouanga, and Bogusz has been outstanding. And it's just going to be fascinating to see what Cherundolo does tactically in this one. I mean, if you want to geek out and go into it, he's played a lot of different systems over the second half of the year in playoffs to somewhat try to fit Giroud, but now it's even a bigger issue where they just get so spread out and really can get hurt offensively now. And Vancouver showed that you can actually get after them, even at LA. So it's not a given. I think this will be another fascinating kind of game and tactical matchup. Very similar to us in terms of like what happens and transpires tactically, because you do have kind of this quote unquote offense versus defense for both these games.
Do you guys think Giroud has not worked out there? It just feels like it hasn't worked out there. I mean, he hasn't scored a goal for them yet. He's got one assist in 10 or so games. I don't feel like it's fit. He's been a good fit for what they've done so far this season, John.
I think it's just you put Giroud and Kai Kamara in the same spot, and it's like putting sodium and water. They don't mix right. I'm not thinking of the right elements there, but you put them next to each other, and they're so similar that they can't work out. You can't have two of them. You can't.
How do we talk about Tim Ream and Brad Guzan at their ages playing for their national team, but then we forget to mention Kai Kamara actually going back and playing for his national team? Just incredible story that man's career has been, Manny.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, the Giroud one's interesting. I do think if you kind of do a deep dive into the analytics, part of the issue is like his hold up play has not been great. And it usually it is pretty darn good, and he kind of holds up the ball and gets in the box and creates chances. So I don't know. I mean, I think my viewpoint is he will be back next year and he'll probably be a lot better. And I think but you're right. It somehow hasn't quite clicked. And I feel like there's an imbalance of maybe their roster is a little bit too old and a little bit too young right now. Their center midfield kind of has been up and down. So like I said, it's been an interesting, it's great that you have to play the games, because on paper you're like, oh, he's going to elevate this team. And the reality is it hasn't worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny. The biggest challenge for the Los Angeles teams is trying to resist signing the European veterans that want to play there. You know what I mean? Like, you look at LAFC, what do they really need? Well, we don't need a number 9 target forward, but Olivier Giroud. Why? How can we not? It's just like trying to stop themselves from signing these guys when they clearly need, or even the Galaxy that's like, what do they really need? Well, they need a center back. All right, I hear what you said. Let's sign Marco Royce. That's a great idea. That's what we're going to do this summer.
That one's worked out a little better, though.
I mean, it's been fine, but you look at what the Galaxy really needed. It was not a veteran number 9 / attacking midfielder.
You talk about the Galaxy, so let's jump right into that one. That game coming up Sunday. Dan Terrar, Zarek Valentine, and myself on the call for that one. 4:30 pre-match show, 5:25 kickoff out in Los Angeles at Dignity Health Sports Park. Looking forward to this one. We talked a little bit about this 2 weeks ago, so we don't have to dive too much into the tacticals. If you want more of that, go back to the last episode. How are you guys feeling about this this long break that we've had now, couple weeks. I don't think they had any international players, so LA Galaxy have all been kind of just practicing at their training facility. Minnesota has had a number of international players who stayed in game shape. Now, discussing travel, that's a different story, and getting those guys back and ready for that one is going to be a trick, but we've seen them do that a number of times this season. How are we feeling about this match now that the long break is over, Manny?
I think the three of us should get an award for we went 45 minutes and we stayed away from what has been building for I think everybody for 3 weeks. And it's funny, like you're upset about the international break, you're sad about like how long the break has been, but I love the vibes of our community. I love, hearing all these people are flying out. I think we sold out the supporter section in LA. I
Yeah, you
love
had to get extra tickets, I believe.
yeah, yeah, I love that. I've had some great texts from the sporting local community about just getting excited for this weekend and the vibes I can take to this group that I think the training hasn't been about, oh, guys are gone. So, they were going to wait till they get back. No, it's been great training sessions. Obviously, we had the great event at Allianz Field over the weekend. It's a big couple days now for us with those guys coming back and now really integrating into the group. I don't think the minutes outside of Joseph Rosales have been really excessive for a lot of guys in this break where they got the minutes, but that they needed to get some minutes. You can't just take a break for 3 weeks. So I think Joseph is only our guy, what we call like in the red zone, where we're a little bit worried about his output now, getting 4 or 5 days rest. He on paper could be a little fatigued. Hopefully not. Hopefully he's really kind of regenerating the right way. And I couldn't be more excited. Like I said, it's took 45 minutes to get here and talk about the game. It is one of the biggest games in Minnesota United history. It's on the road. It's against probably on paper the best team left, but there's also a lot of people in our market, maybe not externally, that have a nice belief because they've been watching this team for the last 3 months, and we match up well against them defensively. So couldn't be more excited. Again, it'd be a little bit more like homer bias now. It's just going to be a great weekend. So excited for the fans, so excited for the club, so excited for the Minnesota community.
John, how you feeling about this match now that the long 3-week break is over?
Well, as as somebody who's involved in MLS, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, I'm just tired of trying to explain a 3-week break in the middle of the playoffs. Because anytime you talk to someone, I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, where people are almost accusing you of causing it. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, how come you organized the 3-week break? Well, it wasn't me. Don't look at me. I didn't organize this. I'm not the one that can't pull up the FIFA International Match calendar at the MLS League office and go, November, it's a November break. Maybe we should try to be done before that. What do you think? I don't know. I don't know. But as far as the game itself, I think what I've said is I think Minnesota can win 2-1. I don't think Minnesota can win 4-2. And they can't. It's one of those. I don't think that Minnesota can afford to get into a track meet with the LA Galaxy. That's not going to be the way that they win a game like this. But they are well set up in the sense that a team like Minnesota does not have to look at a game against the Galaxy and think about, all right, we need to make the following 3 lineup changes and 4 really major tactical tweaks to really try to combat what the Galaxy try to do well. And Minnesota's got to play as a different team in order to have a chance against the Galaxy. This is who Minnesota is. This is how they play against everybody. They don't have to roll out a different lineup and a different strategy to try to beat the Galaxy. And this is what Eric Ramsey has been saying. We've had to ask him the same questions for 3 weeks in a row, basically, because we've got this big break. But in terms of what they're looking at, in terms of what they're going to try to do, what he's consistently said is, we're going to just try to be ourselves. We got to be the best version of ourselves, and that's how we're going to attack this game, because this is how they're set up. And so I think that's really interesting in the sense that the Galaxy are going to be who they are too. The Galaxy they're not going to change their game and suddenly play a 5-4-1 with a lone forward that's chasing punts from John McCarthy or whatever. They're going to play like they do. Minnesota's going to play like they do, and it's going to be a battle of 2 different styles.
All right, Manny, as I've done my research on the Galaxy, putting together game notes and everything for the broadcast, one thing that has really stuck out to me is LA Galaxy second halves. This season, including the playoffs, their second half goal total is 53. compared to the first half, 25 goals scored. They've scored 53 goals in the second half, and I
Holy
can't put a
cow.
finger on why that is so different. Manny, what can you tell me after watching this team and studying the LA Galaxy for the last 3 weeks, why they are so much better, incredibly better in the second half than they are in the first half?
I think John kind of alluded to it. There's not a lot of teams in the league that can defend for 90 minutes the way you have to keep your compactness and the way you have to not allow the game to open up in terms of allowing Ricky Puig to dribble vertically and then break lines. And then now Peck is going, now Pansel's going. Joveljic is making great runs in the box. Royce has kind of have the clever touches to kind of, stretch the game. So I do think we're one of the few teams in the league that knows how to defend for 90 minutes and keep compact. Knock on wood, I really think that is the key to the game, more so than even RSL, where I'm actually okay if we defend a little bit deeper in this game. I was a little bit like in the RSL game, I thought we could have done a little better of not defending so deep because we actually didn't need to as much. This one, potentially just keeping it tight and not allowing, whether it's the 55th, 60th minute, the whole game is compact for us. Wherever we are in the field, if we're on the offensive end, everything with the group is entirely compact, and that allows the game not to open up. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that can keep that discipline defensively. Now, again, Peck has been outstanding. I think he is a key that we need to make sure we manage him well. That'll be a great match with him and Joseph. And ultimately, like I said, I think that's where not just defending is important, but now we have to hurt them when they throw those numbers forward. And right now they have two outside backs that kind of think they're forwards and think they're going to score the goal. So they'll attack. And so we can't just defend. We actually have to hurt the spaces that they leave when we defend well and make sure we're getting offensive moments, offensive chances, even keeping the ball for extended periods more than we're used to. We're actually not a great ball possession team this year, but we probably will have to hurt them if they throw that many numbers forward. A, we have to deal with it and make sure they don't score and score a lot. And then B, we do have to hurt them offensively based on the fact that they will throw a lot of numbers forward. They will want to stretch the game and will want to attack in a way that when we finish the attack, we're back to our compactness. And again, it's easy to talk about. It's insanely hard to do that for 90 minutes, and it's insanely hard to do that for 90 minutes against probably the best offensive team now in the league.
Yeah, it's setting up for a very interesting match. I'm going to ask this question to you guys both and about both teams. So just stick with the team that we're starting off with here, LA Galaxy. Should the Galaxy win on Sunday, who is the player that, I guess you can call them the man of the match? Who is the player that helps them the most in winning this match? John, I'll start with you then, Manny.
I think, honestly, as weird as it is to say about the Galaxy, one of the keys to the game might be Marky Delgado, their defensive midfielder for the Galaxy, because that dude just basically has to run around. It's like he should be holding a fire extinguisher on the field as he's running around. Because, like Manny said, they've got three forwards and Ricky Puig, none of whom even barely run back on defense. And then they've got two outside backs that want to get forward. Usually they're playing another central midfielder that pushes forward. And so pretty often you've got Delgado and their two center backs who are defending 3-on-3 for about half of the game. So if that's going to be a key for them is for the Galaxy to try to figure out, can they defend in those transition moments well enough to keep Minnesota from getting shots, keep Minnesota from getting chances. If they can, then you don't see Minnesota putting together a 45 pass move to try to create a shot on goal.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, John, about Delgado. I think his heat map has him as one of the highest runners outputs in terms of mileage in games this year. So he has to do that for the Galaxy success. I still think it's Ricky Puig. If I take off my Minnesota United hat, he is one of the funnest players to watch in the league live. Just because it's one of my favorite things about soccer is you have these different type of looking athletic people that you're like, no, they can't be that good. And then he's able to, wire himself around big, tall, athletic guys, fast guys. He really does create space in different ways with the ball, passing, breaking lines. But he also could be their detriment because when things don't go well, he tends to go a little bit rogue discipline on the defensive side, which creates a lot of space and time for guys to go forward. So he's probably my key to the game no matter what. But I also bring up Peck because I think he's probably the most looked at player in Europe for potentially going to the next level based on his speed, his athleticism, and and how his trajectory at LA Galaxy started from pretty raw to now pretty darn disciplined, good, and probably on a trajectory to a Premier League level player.
Yes. 4 goals, 4 assists, including, or in his last 5 games, including the playoffs. He expanded that out to 7 games. It's 6 goals, 6 assists for Gabriel Peck in his last 6 games, including the playoff games against Colorado. So he's been outstanding for them. All right, opposite side for Minnesota. Should they win on Sunday, which player is going to be the reason why they pull off this win in California, John?
I think if they win, the man of the match is going to be Robin Lod because he is the guy that has he's got the vision and the passing to create the angles and the spaces that nobody else sees. And it's one thing to just say, "Oh, Kelvin Yeboah is up front, just kick it long and try to let Yeboah run onto it." But I sort of said this against Real Salt Lake too with Joaquin Pereira. But it's the guys who are the creators, the guys who are going to find something that nobody else sees, especially in those transition moments. That is going to be the key if Minnesota is going to beat LA.
Manny?
I love the comment by John. I can't pinpoint one. I actually would just cheat and say load Pereira together because they really now are our 2 number 10s in the system we're going to play on Sunday. So they're both going to have to be lights out in terms of keeping the ball, deciding when to say, guys, let's get numbers forward and let's go for some moments. But also they're going to be the key to kind of finish plays off the right way where we don't lose balls in bad spots and we don't get the game opened in stretch, which will really hurt us. So I think I'll just extend that to say load Pereira kind of one player. But it's a group effort. Dane's going to have a great day. Obviously, our back 3 are going to have to be lights out. Our wing backs are going to have to get forward at the right times because we cannot just defend for 90 minutes with the back 5. It's going to be too much. But they both have great challenges with Pansel and Peck where they're going to be pushed back sometimes and defending in the 18-yard box for sure.
Yeah. And the one other thing that I feel like I want to say about Lod and Pereira and even Yeboah, if you look at Minnesota's first half in the first game against the Galaxy this year, they held the Galaxy without a shot, without not even just a shot on target. They held them without a shot. They held them without a corner. And I think the biggest factor defensively was how well the 3 forwards in that game defended. It was Oluwaseyi and Longwane and Sangbin Jong in that first game. But their defending from the front, I think, was the key from keeping Pooch off the ball. And I think you look at Minnesota, they're probably going to play Lod and Pereira and Yeboah. Those 3 are going to have to defend from the front and be that first line of defense in a way that it's important always in Minnesota's setup, but it couldn't be more important with Pooch in the way that he plays. And so that's going to be another one of the keys, not only in creating things in transition, but how well those 3 defend and how much energy they have to chase around Pooch and chase around all those guys
and I think that's the reason why I like the question, kind of hated the question, is then my brain goes to how good Dotson and Trapp have to be. I mean, both of those guys are going to have a couple crushing tackles on Royce and Pooch to remind them this is not going to be an easy 90 minutes where you just get to float around and kind of find your passes and pick up your head. I mean, those 2 guys are going to have beastly games in the middle. I mean, and they're going to have to roll up their sleeves and do a lot of dirty work along with being really sharp on the ball when we get it and not just playing backwards. They're going to have to be clever and have to hurt LA Galaxy because I don't think LA Galaxy wants to do what you just said, where we will defend with our front 3 and we will make sure we're tight and organized. Like I said, you threw me out where Yeboah is just going to have to be unbelievable on both sides of the ball. So for 90 minutes, it is a game where we have to have our 11 guys show up and not necessarily, I don't think LA Galaxy have to have their 11 guys show up to win. So that's just a reality. But I'm excited about that because I think our 11 guys have been showing up for a couple months now.
Yeah, I'm excited for this match. I cannot wait for this game. Sunday, 4:30 pre-match show on 1500 ESPN, Score North mobile app, scorenorth.com. Looking forward to that with Dan Terrar, Zarek Valentine, and myself. 5:25 p.m. kickoff on Apple TV, FS1, as well as 1500 ESPN. Looking forward to the call of that game. All right, before we close out, quick pick 'em to close out the show. NYCFC, New York Red Bulls. John, you first, then Manny.
I'm going to pick NYCFC because they're playing at the cozy confines of a winterized city field that has a circus in the parking lot. And how can you fight against that home field advantage?
Manny?
I'm going to agree with John. By the way, there is a little bit of I think this is the rivalry that has the most potential, and I don't support or encourage violence at all. But this is the one. This is the one where
But
honestly they probably should have extra security because I do think these two fan bases kind of want to have a little bit of tension and physical altercation. So I think it's going to be a really tense game. I think it's going to be a tense atmosphere. I do think there's going to be some issues, actually. I really do. I think these fan bases are hungry to kind of like not like each other to an nth degree where, off the field, I think they're going to have a lot of security personally. But on the field, I think NYCFC is going to find a way to get through as well. That'd be my pick.
I just want to, I'm seeing sort of the undercurrent here, and I want to send a message to any Loons fans who are going to LA who might be listening to this. Manny is a San Jose Earthquakes legend. And so I just want to say, if you see him in the away section in Los Angeles, head on a swivel, because this is a guy who's about to jump into some Galaxy fans and just start swinging.
By the way, our first championship, I had a great picture of my son winning the championship on this field. So this is one of the older stadiums, newer stadiums, and it plays really well for an older / newer stadium. So nice memory there. Nice, John. That got my blood going a little bit more even.
Here we go. Manny's ready. He's cracking the knuckles. He's limbering up the shoulders a little bit. We're getting ready.
If I see Manny stretching on the bus on the way over to the stadium, I'm concerned. Just warming up. Got a bigger bag that has boxing gloves in it for some reason. Concerned. LAFC Seattle Sounders 9:30 kickoff for that one Saturday night. Manny, who are you picking?
I think I said it earlier. I'm gonna have LAFC, but my brain can't actually see where the game goes or how it plays out. I just picked them because they're home.
John?
Seattle's got the chance to lose 5 times in a season to the same team, which is hard to do, and also get knocked out of 3 different cup competitions by the same team. So I can't look at the results and pick Seattle, but it is MLS, so Sounders, I guess.
I think I'm going LAFC on this one. Just it screams that LAFC are going to get the win here and complete the sweep once again over Seattle. Orlando City, Atlanta, 2:30 p.m. Sunday. John?
I think Orlando City's winning that one. I think Orlando City is better than we give them credit for.
Manny?
Yeah, I got to go with my contrarian side too. The national pundits like anointed this thing 2 weeks ago. I don't know if they remember that Orlando's been really good this year, top 14. They're the only team that has home field throughout the rest of the Eastern Conference, and I agree. I got Orlando.
Yeah, I think I'm going to Orlando here. But again, I wouldn't be surprised because, as John said, it's MLS. Literally anything can happen, it feels like. Looking forward to this slate of playoff games coming up this weekend, boys. Looking forward to it and talking to you right back here on the podcast. Monday, we'll record early next week because of the Thanksgiving holiday and the potential, should the Loons win, a return trip to the West Coast to take on either LAFC or the Seattle Sounders. Looking forward to that possibility, hoping that certainly happens. And boys, we'll talk to you right back here on Monday. Thanks to the production staff of Grace Dearson, Evan Etler, and Kyle Hayward for putting this on every week. And Loons fans, we'll talk to you next week.